Hi, I'm Barry Trailer, and I'm glad you've joined us today for this session of looking at what are the right things to measure when looking at your rep activities and their results. I hope you enjoy it. Today we're going to address a question that came up in a sales manager's call with a client a few weeks ago. Near the end of the call, one of them asked, we've implemented Salesforce.com and sales process, we've done some reorg and so on, all in an effort to increase productivity. We're able to measure a lot of things, but the question this individual has, are we measuring the right things, or what are the right things to measure? And that's what we want to talk about today. So yes, it's all about increasing productivity. That's why everybody is investing in these tools and applications and processes and so on. But the question I always like to ask for starters is, how do you measure productivity? And typically it's, either total revenue or value of the pipeline or, quota attainment or something along those lines, all of which are results. And all of which are lagging indicators, because by the time you know what a result is, it's baked. By definition, results are things that are done. And so you don't really manage results, you monitor results. And so effectively, you are always looking in the rearview mirror. So in an effort to get, sort of ahead of the curve and not, constantly chasing numbers that are already accomplished, people started doing activity management. And the school of thought was that activities are what results in productivity, or activities are what generate results. Therefore, activities equal productivity. And these folks became big fans of activity management and largely belonged to the school of business. The harder I work, the luckier I get. And the feeling for these folks is, as activities go up, so goes productivity, or so should go productivity. But anyone who's ever been involved in a blitz campaign knows that you can have huge activity and actually see productivity go down because of at least one other variable, and that is, what is the quality of the activity? And so the question becomes, how do you define quality in sales? So we know what activities look like, but what does quality look like? And for starters, that's where we want to talk about sales process. Now, like everything else in life, it's really about balance. And I've seen, we've talked about very high A, little q gives you not a big lever on productivity, but the flip side of that is people, what I call hiding out in the process, where they are following the process and documenting and have even, put together, either their own forms or spreadsheets, in PowerPoint or Visio or whatever they've been working on for weeks. And, the quality is enormous. And by God, one day they're actually going to go call on somebody. It's going to be amazing. The activity is tiny, and therefore productivity is still low. So what you want is a balance between activity and the quality of activity to get productivity. And when you have those in balance, you can introduce another variable, which is the time being spent on these things. And as the time goes down, and I don't mean total selling time, but time to execute calls, outreach, emails, and so on. As the time goes down, that also is a positive lever on productivity. One of the things to say about this time going down would also be that equals efficiency. So you'll often hear, is this an efficiency thing or an effectiveness thing? Well, the quality is an effectiveness thing. The activity is both effectiveness if you're doing it well and efficiency if you're doing it quickly. Okay, so activity times quality over time equals productivity. And my partner Jim Dickey added a final dimension a while back, which is D. And what does D stand for? Wait for it. Distractions. Okay. When we worked with FedEx, they called distractions anything that pulled away from selling time, corrupted selling time. And so again, if you're able to reduce the distractions, the corrupted selling time, that also is a positive lever on productivity. So now we have our full equation. Activity times quality. If you can reduce the time to do these things and reduce the distractions pulling away from these sales activities, all of those will be positive levers on productivity. So let's talk about this quality business, the sales process. When we worked with clients defining sales process, often they would say what got them from leads to orders were some number of milestone steps along the way. Whatever 1 through N was, we always invited them to look at N+1. What does successful install or implementation or delivery look like? And N+2, what does ongoing customer care comprise? And we felt that was the full sales process. When they had that, the folks would then go on to say, and here's what we do at each of those steps as sellers to advance the sale. What are the seller's actions? And again, we would ask them to look at what would customer service also do once the deal was closed. But the thing that tended to be a big aha for folks, and we felt we were adding a lot of value when we did this, was to look at what does the buyer do at each of these steps to advance the sale as well. And one of the things that's interesting, and particularly interesting today when we talk about the customer's buying journey, is as you get further into this, and certainly after the close, they'll have more actions than the seller going forward. And so we said that was the full sales process. And today, again, to bring this into sort of the 21st century, what is the more popular approach now, or maybe the more current approach, is to define the customer's buying journey first and then align your sales process to that. We were really looking at what do we do to advance the sale, what does the buyer do? So it was really an inside-out point of view. And now today, we're looking more at outside in. What is the buyer doing? And then what do we do to align with that? So having said all of that, here's where this becomes useful and gets around answering the question, are we measuring the right things? One of the things you can measure is fallout. So where do we lose deals in the sales process? And the thing people talk about are close rates. So if you said 40% close rate, that would mean for every 100 deals or opportunities coming into the pipeline, 60 are falling out, 40 are closing, assuming reasonably homogeneous, similar sized deals and so on. Rep A here in red is losing 60 deals early in the cycle, and Rep B here in blue is losing 60 deals later in the cycle. So they have identical close rates, but are they equally productive? And the answer is no. And the reason is later stage sales steps typically are more resource intensive. Certainly more time has been invested getting them to that point. People are counting on them more. And so when they fall out late in the sales cycle as opposed to early, it's much more painful. And besides all of the resource and investment that's gone into getting them to this point, they're also consuming bandwidth, sales cycles, and so on. So no other real opportunities can advance while these losers are using up resource, time, energy, resource. So there's no shame in losing a deal. The shame is in taking a long time to do it. If you're going to lose them early, not late in the sales cycle. Number one, looking at fallout and where are they falling out. And the reason you need to define a sales process is so that you have a standard against which to measure. Now, the other thing you can do is look at, and again, talking about what should we be measuring, is what is the time to get between each of these steps. So cycle time is an important thing to look at and begin to measure. And if you find there's a choke point late in the sales cycle when it gets to terms and conditions, as an example, maybe that's something that could be looked at earlier. If you're finding that deals fall out late in the sales cycle because the final approver did not approve of your approach or that there was no budget, that would be a good thing to find out early in the cycle, not later. So all of that. Another thing you could look at is conversion rates from one stage to another. All of these are leading indicators as opposed to lagging indicators that we were talking about earlier. So you could, things to measure, what are the fallout patterns? What are cycle times from one to another? What are conversion rates from one step to another? What activities, either seller activities or buyer activities at each step, which ones along the way correlate with winning? Or these things, moving it forward. Which activities seem to be the key ones that always show up, that move it from one step to the next, and that in the end correlate with winning? Those are the kinds of things you want to look for, and those are, in answer to the question, the right things to measure. So I hope you find this useful. Thanks for listening today, and I look forward to hearing your feedback and questions.